Next speaker will be Financial Officer from EISMEA, Anna Kontarova. Anna, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the floor. So let's look into financial provisions related to this call. Next slide, please. So first of all, you will have to submit 2 documents as a part of your project application. These are the summarized budget table, which is application form part A. This is to be manually filled online directly in the portal, and the second one is the detailed budget table. This one is a template to be filled and uploaded in allowed format. Normally this format should be PDF, therefore please pay attention how then you basically convert and merge this file, because it has to be one file for the whole consortium. So firstly, what you should do, it is to prepare this detailed budget table, the template format, as it is a mandatory annex. It has to be uploaded, as I said, and then you will be able to finalize the summarized budget table, which is the summary basically of the detailed budget table. And basically make sure that there are no discrepancies between these 2 documents, because then in this case we will have to take into account only the amounts which are filled in the online summarized budget. Next slide, please. Now we will look into more details, like more from the technical perspective, into this template, the detailed budget template, which you have to download and then fill in and upload. So basically, it's an Excel file. So it is very important that you read the introductory pages. These will not have to be basically submitted, but they will help you with all the instructions how to fill in this detailed budget table. Important is for you also to fill in a sheet number 2, start, because the project data, when you fill it here and below, you will add these new work packages and then update the detailed budget table, and it will nicely create the structure for the basically whole detailed budget table. What are important part for us, which you will have to resubmit for sure, are sheets number 3, 4, and 5. In the next slide, we will see in more detail the sheet number 3, which is the detail table. So basically, this detail table will have to be submitted per each member of the consortium and in case there is an affiliated entity. So how you will do it? Basically, your budgets have to be based on the detailed and reasonable and accurate estimates. No one is asking for the real cost at this moment. It will be always estimates for the project proposal. So this budget table is broken down by cost categories and work packages. Therefore, it's important to fill in the sheet 2, so the structure is correct. The number of work packages will be same in all the budget categories, and in case there are no costs in any of the or in some of the work packages, you will leave it empty. Then the budget table, in the budget table, you will have to fill in only eligible costs. Each item should be listed only once in its main work package section. Please use your best estimates, and maybe also a tip that if you see a white cell, there you need to enter the data and the blue cells are automatically calculated. Next slide, please. So sheet number 4, it's a consolidated table per participant. And this table is calculated automatically from, it will take the data from the previous sheet. But again, it's per participant. So we will have sheet 3 and sheet 4 always per participant. Sheet number 5 is a consolidated table per whole project. This sheet needs to be assembled manually by the coordinator, and it must match the financial data entered automatically and calculated in other tables. Next slide, please. So as I said, the detailed budget table has to be submitted per beneficiary. And well, per work package and the cost category. In the next slides, we will go through all the cost categories, as you can see below on the left side. And just to remind you that the budget has to be budget presented has to be in balance, meaning the project cost has to be equal to project income. Next slide, please. So the first major cost category is the personal cost. Basically, these costs can fall under any of the following 4 subcategories. On this slide, you see 3 subcategories, and first one is the employees or equivalent. These costs are eligible if they fulfill the general eligibility conditions and are related to the personal working for the beneficiary under an employment contract or equivalent. Equivalent in this case means equivalent appointing act of civil servants, and they have to be assigned to the action. So eligible cost can include salaries, social security contributions, taxes, and other costs linked to the remuneration if they arise from the national law and the employment contract, and they are always actually incurred. For the calculation method, you can see that it is a daily rate for the person multiplied by number of day equivalents worked on the action. And this number of day equivalents worked on the action that you will know from the timesheets, which the person submits they are signed. And the daily rate is the line below. You calculate it as annual personal cost for the person divided by 215 days. Here I would like to just highlight that this 215 days, it's a horizontal ceiling for all EU and Euratom grants. Therefore, you cannot use different number. Even if the person worked more or less than 215 days, you will always have to calculate it with 215 days per calendar year. There are no exceptions to this rule. And for the detailed budget table, you will have to present monthly rate for each person who works on the action. The second and third subcategory are natural persons under direct contract, other than employment contract. This could be, for example, civil, freelance, expert contracts, but these will have to be carefully checked because sometimes these contracts can be also more suited under subcontracting, which I will explain later. And then we have seconded persons. Costs for seconded persons are also eligible if they are assigned to the action and then fulfill general eligibility questions. Here the definition of the seconded personnel is that when a person is transferred from a third party to the beneficiary, but it's still employed and paid by the third party, but works for the beneficiaries. He is basically at the disposal of the beneficiary. Next slide, please. The fourth category which we have are SME owners and natural persons without salary. These are eligible costs in case here we speak about the direct owners or co-owners of the SME. SMEs has to be the beneficiaries of the action, and the owners or co-owners do not receive salary. Normally, we check also if the SME status is declared in the portal and also verify the names with the documents provided. The natural person beneficiaries are beneficiaries that are natural persons, basically self-employed persons who are not receiving a salary. You will find more detailed information under Annex 2A, but also in the Commission decision, which is linked below. And here in the calculation of the basically cost is different than the first 3 categories because SME owners and the natural persons without salaries basically we calculate the unit cost per day equivalent worked on the action. You will see the detailed cost calculation in Annex 2A, but in principle, you will just take 282.22 euros. And then below, I link the country-specific correction coefficient, multiply this these two numbers together because this country-specific correction coefficient depends on the country in which the SME is registered. So you have to calculate this unit cost and then multiply by number of day equivalents in the action, not month equivalents, but day equivalents. Next slide, please. And this is how it will look like in the detailed budget table. So basically, for each these three categories, A1, A2, A3, the rate is monthly. You will have to, from the drop-down menu, indicate the position of the person, and then monthly rate and time. Time is basically the person month. Only for the SME owners, you will indicate the daily rate, the unit cost which you calculated, and the time equivalent. And then please, we would like to ask you to also fill in the description of the project role and tasks, the right column. It's very important for us, but yeah, it can be only copied from the narrative part B. Next slide. Yes, and in the application form, the technical description in 2.3 table, you will have to fill in the project team, staff, and experts, and then from here you just copy paste the description into the detailed budget table. Next slide. And as Annex 5 is also a mandatory part, additional information to Part B, you will have to fill in the tables 2.3 project teams and 5 planned effort days and planned effort months. Next slide, please. Another big cost category is basically subcontracting, which serves to purchase goods, works, and services which are related to the implementation of the specific tasks which are part of the action. This is very important. Normally, subcontractors work without the direct supervision of the beneficiary, as opposed to in-house consultants, and subcontracting is limited. Basically, no core tasks such as project coordination or management can be basically subcontracted. And another limitation for this specific call is that subcontracting is allowed only in work package 2 and here for the promotion of the program. Please note that subcontracting has to be described in advance, basically when you are submitting your proposals in Annex 1 and the corresponding cost budgeted in Annex 2. Normally, if it's about 30% of the total cost, we will ask also for a justification. Yes, and well, basically the beneficiary has to ensure the best value for money or the lowest price and must follow a completed selection procedure in compliance with their internal procurement rules. And of course, avoiding any conflict of interest is necessary. Next slide, please. And yes, this is the part where you will have to fill it in Annex 1, Part B. Information about the subcontracting. Next slide. Third category is purchase cost. Basically, purchase costs are contracts to make, again, to get services, works, and goods that are necessary to carry out the action. But in this case, they do not cover the implementation of the action. Therefore, the purchase is necessary to carry out the action, but it's not the implementation tasks. They also do not have to be indicated in Annex 1, such as subcontracting, and normally they do not fall under any other category. And here we will go through one by one of the subcategories in more details. Next slide, please. Travel, accommodation, and subsistence costs. So the costs for this subcategory are eligible only for the personnel working for the action. They have to be justified, meaning necessary under the action, planned, supported by relevant documents, of course, and made following the usual practice of the beneficiary. This is important, usual practice of the beneficiary, because normally if there is audit, they check this. To be eligible, they must be budgeted as unit cost, meaning these are prefix amounts. And in limited cases, they can be also budgeted as actual costs, but only, for example, if the destination country, the travel or the distance is not covered by the EC decision below. You will be able to click on the link directly. So for unit cost values, you will find in this decision, but also in Annex 2A. And so how you calculate these, as these are unit costs, you will have to calculate basically for the travel, the distance between the departure and arrival points. You will have to be really specific, Lisbon, for example, from Lisbon to Madrid. And the departure point in this case is meant a place of work. There is a flight and rail calculator, which is basically developed for this purpose. It's very user-friendly, and we invite you to calculate your distances through this. You will find all the information related on that web page. Then for the accommodation and subsistence rates, these are fixed per each country. As regards accommodation, we are speaking about 1 unit, 1 night. Subsistence are for 24-hour period. And for the travel, I forgot to mention that here we speak about unit, and 1 unit is 1 journey. And also for the distance, very often we get the question that basically when you will calculate the distance, you will have to calculate it one way. However, the unit cost will be per return trip. And next slide, please. And the relevant section in the detailed budget table will look like this. You will have to fill in either cost, actual cost, which is the left column, but normally majority cost will be under unit cost, which is the middle section. And then we will ask you also to provide the description, such as how many persons are traveling, the destination, so we can verify if you calculate it correctly, how many nights, journeys you are estimating. Next slide, please. Second subcategory under other direct cost is equipment, and more concretely, purchase of the equipment, infrastructure, or other assets. These must be declared as depreciation, like depreciation cost, and calculated on the basis of actual cost incurred and written off in accordance with international accounting standards or usual practice of the beneficiary. Again, if there is an audit, they will verify if it's done according to the usual practice of the beneficiary. If not, then international accounting standards. Eligible costs are only the portion of the cost that corresponds to the rate of actual use of the action during the action duration. So this has to be taken into account only. On the other hand, also renting and leasing of the equipment is allowed, but the costs cannot exceed the depreciation cost of similar equipment. Here, I would like to mention that, for example, computers, software, and printers should not be listed normally under equipment. They are part of indirect costs, which I will explain later. But it could be the exception only in case it is some specific computer or software that is necessary to implement some specific technical tasks. Otherwise, they are automatically included under indirect costs. Next slide, please. Third category are other costs, and these are basically purchases of other goods, works, and services, which are calculated basically on actual cost. You will have to apply again the principle of value for money or lowest price, and they have to be purchased specifically for the implementation of the action. Here, for example, if you will organize some consortium meeting, you will budget the cost in this category under conferences, seminars, workshops. You will put the estimated amount, plus in the description, you can write, for example, how much you expect for the catering, meeting rooms, rental, etc. If you will have to provide certificate for financial statements, then also the cost to be budgeted here under audit fees CFS. Next slide, please. So the fourth important category, financial support to third parties, we have been already mentioning this in the two previous slides, but this is more to repeat than to show you where to input the information in the detailed budget table. So basically, it is the financial assistance paid to the new entrepreneurs to help them or to cover the part of their expenditure for their stay abroad with the host entrepreneur. As we rightly said before, the costs are reimbursed at a rate of 100%, and the requirement of this call is that at least 50% of the estimated maximum grant amount per project must be reserved here for the financial support to the new entrepreneurs. It is important that FSTP is part of the project. It's a condition and has to be included under the corresponding budget heading. Basically, applicants have to elaborate how the financial support to third parties will be managed and how the activities of the new entrepreneurs abroad will comply with the program rules. For the detailed budget table, you will have to use again your best estimates. These estimates are to be used under unit costs, not actual costs. So unit cost, there you have amount per unit, but here it's difficult to say, I know at this moment, but you should use estimated average monthly financial support, and for the number of units, estimated number of person months. Next slide. As Ralph has already explained, that the FSTP must be budgeted for a partner who will make the transfer of or who will transfer the money to the new entrepreneur. And there are some deviations, as we told you, but these are only accepted in duly justified cases. So this financial support to third parties has to be budgeted as unit cost per third party and host country, with the maximum duration, minimum legal duration is 1 month to a maximum 6 months, and amount per third party is defined per host country and maximum duration of 6 months. This we said maximum 6,600 euros per new entrepreneur. And for the calculation method, these monthly unit costs are already calculated in the Commission decision, and you can also find them in the quality manual Annex 1. And next slide, please. This still concerns FSTP Annex 5. You will have to fill in table 1.2 needs analysis and specific objectives. Next slide, please. And the last cost category are indirect costs. These are basically running and operating costs or overheads. For example, these are the computers which I was mentioning, which you would use normally during the operation of your entity, stationery, rent of the office, utilities to pay. Basically, they are not specific costs directly linked to the action implementation, and they cannot be attributed directly to it, but they must represent a fair portion of the overall overheads and comply with the eligibility conditions. Therefore, these are basically reimbursed at a flat rate of 7% of the eligible direct costs. In the detailed budget table, they will be calculated automatically, but in case your organization already receives an EU operating grant, you cannot claim these costs. Therefore, you will have to manually add 0 there. And also, maybe just to tell you that there is no breakdown of these costs required, no information to be explained. These are calculated automatically. Next slide. So here we are coming to the green part of the budget table, and this is the project income. Basically, we already said that the project costs have to be in balance with project income. So the the majority of your project income will be basically covered by the EU contribution or grant which you are applying for, and it is calculated by multiple funding rates, 100% reimbursed for FSTP and 90% for all other cost categories. But in case EU grant does not cover the whole amount, you will have to introduce revenues or even own resources. So what revenues or contributions you can have? So it can be an income generated by the action, such as direct revenues or receipts. For example, you will organize a conference and the participants will be charged a fee. In this case, you will have to report it as an income generated by the action. Then you can also receive financial contributions from third parties, but in this case, we do not mean third parties as the new entrepreneurs. These are different entities outside of the project. For example, some regional government decides to support your action. This could be considered as financial contribution from third party. And then the rest or the remaining amount, let's say difference, will be automatically calculated as own resources or own contribution of the beneficiary. And it's also a good indicator. If you will see basically a positive amount or zero, it's good. The budget is in balance. But if you will see a minus value amount, then there is some discrepancy in your budget or some imbalance, and you will have to check it once again. What is the issue? Next slide, please. Payment arrangements. This has been already explained before, but maybe just to remind you again. So basically, once you will sign a grant agreement, you will receive pre-financing to start working on the project, which is basically automatic. You will not have to submit any request for pre-financing, and it will be 50% of the maximum grant amount which has been calculated. There will be one periodical and technical financial report which is linked to interim payment and detailed cost reporting, and then a final report, again financial and technical part, where we will calculate the payment of the balance depending on the approval of the financial report. Either you will receive additional payment or we will ask for recovery. And all the payments will be made to the coordinator's bank account. And according to the grant agreement, coordinator must distribute the payments received from the granting authority to the other beneficiaries without any unjustified delay. Next slide. This was all from my side. I hope you were able to grasp some of the information. It's a lot, it's quite technical. And I also would like to invite you to check annotated grant agreement, which can be downloaded from the funding and tenders portal, where you have basically all the rules, the interpretation of the rules, as well as examples, which can help you to fill in your budget. But do not hesitate to ask questions, and we wish you good luck with submitting your proposals. Thank you very much.